afternoon, everyone. I was sitting there thinking as Bernie was talking. We had this discussion about calling him Pastor Bernie, so I'm forcing myself to call him just Bernie. I was thinking as Bernie was talking about the fact that the world has programs for all the people that you were discussing, all the homeless, the widows, the immigrants, quote-unquote strangers, fatherless, LGBT population. There are services in the community, social services, attempts to address all of these things. And interestingly, in the history of social services, it was the church who played that role, where they were the ones who reached out to poor people, to homeless people, to people without work, to orphans, etc. And then as social services developed and the population grew and the problem got out of hand or bigger than could be handled by the church, or probably a combination of things, it became more of a governmental activity. So as funding became, the funding source became the government, the policies changed. So I was sitting there taking notes and comparing, what is it like? So why does the church need to get involved? Do we join the world? Do we join the secular organizations and start to address these populations along with them? And I came to the conclusion, and I'm sure you already know, that it's not the same thing. And some of the differences might be, first of all, the method. So the method in the secular world and in human services, the method involves assessments, and as Bernie humorously pointed out, we don't do the same kinds of assessments. So the assessments are basically whether or not you are a worthy or unworthy client for whatever the service is. There are culturally specific services, services basically for certain areas of the county, etc. So there's distinctions in that way. Also, method might involve the approach that is taken once the client is accepted into a program or qualifies for a service. There's cognitive behavioral therapy. So an effort to change the thinking and change the behavior of that person. The method was stated, our method as believers was stated in the very beginning. Our method has to do with the fact that we're free to love. We are free to love. We don't have to, we simply have to submit to God. And we have to follow God. And we have to look at His Word, and we get to believe in what God has already told us. There was a number of scriptures, I couldn't get them all down. I'll have to listen to the recording, thank God for the recording, later. Where God sets the example of how we're to address these issues. We don't have to qualify anyone. We don't even have to change their thinking. We are not able to change their behavior. That's God's job. All we have to do is love. The other difference is the motive. Our motive as Christians is different from the secular motive. The motive in secular settings so often is the funding. So therefore it's outcomes, right? We have to have so many clients successfully complete this program by the end of the quarter if you want your funding again. And you'd be surprised the kind of things that people do to juggle the numbers and make sure it fits, and how that will turn your heart away from the client and onto the funding. How wonderful it is to know that the real help comes through knowing God and to submitting to His method, which is to love. in the same way that Jesus loved. And I just wanted to share that because we can get distracted and get involved and start to think that we are doers, we got to do instead of beings, which is what we really are. Our identity is in Christ, and how wonderful it is to know that we have the solution for all of these problems that society is facing right now. We have it in Jesus. And as we take up the offering, and as we put in our offering, let's just consider that we're putting in our hearts, or we're opening our hearts to God's way of reaching out to people and God's way of fulfilling His mission. Let's take up the offering.